Tonight on Bridge City News, it is election day in our province, a chance for you to have your voice heard. Bridge City News will be live tonight bringing you all of the election results. NDP leader Rachel Notley was in Calgary recently, saying her plan is still the best when it comes to diversifying the Alberta economy. And a new transit route connecting Lethbridge to Medicine Hat began yesterday. We have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Tonight is the night millions of Albertans have been looking forward to. It's the Alberta provincial election. Polls are open until 8 o'clock this evening. Bridge City News will bring you the results with our live broadcast beginning at 8 p.m. We'll also be interviewing politicians, a political science professor, and join the action at both the Rachel Notley camp in Edmonton and the Jason Kenney camp in Calgary. The latest poll numbers say the UCP will win a majority government with 63 seats, the NDP with 23 seats, and the Alberta Party with just 1. UCP leader Jason Kenney says the strong turnout in advanced polls indicates Albertans want a change. Kenney told a rally in Edmonton that it is good news for his party in its bid to defeat the NDP government and Rachel Notley. The advanced polls saw a record number of Albertans vote, almost 700,000 in total. That is nearly 3 times more than the number who cast ballots ahead of the 2015 election. A rule change this year allowed early voters to cast ballots anywhere, not just the constituencies where they live. There's some on the left who say the environment should be the main focus of this election, while many on the right say, no, it's more about the economy. Lethbridge West UCP candidate Carrie Flatless says her party can address concerns from both sides.
When the NDP came to power and they implemented a carbon tax, both working Albertans and our business owners were super unhappy with that. And I think it's an unfair narrative to say that it's an either or with environment and economy. The United Conservatives, and myself included, very much believe that we can strike a balance between environment and economy. And in fact, we know that a strong free enterprise economy, especially in our energy sector, will encourage the type of innovation and technological solutions that can help address some of the climate challenges of our time.
Catch my full interview with UCP Lethbridge West candidate Carrie Flatless talking about what it'll take to win tonight, coming up after business news. NDP leader Rachel Notley spent her final day of the election campaign in Calgary comparing her approach to pipelines against the one of her chief opponent, UCP leader Jason Kenney.
My plan is focused on diversifying the economy. Mr. Kenney's plan does not. My Made in Alberta plan for economic diversification will mean that our future is built right here in Alberta, just like with the work that's being done at this site. We have the biggest energy upgrading plan since the days of Premier Lougheed. $75 billion in private sector investment and over 70,000 jobs turning our energy into the products the world needs.
Now, when you hit the polls today, it is likely that there's a fair bit of passion behind your vote. For some Alberta voters, they're fueled by the Stop Notley campaign. It's a movement inspired by the book Stop Notley, written by Sheila Gunn Reid. Founder of OneCalgaryVoter.com, Derek Bodner, says it is not just about Rachel Notley, but the decisions her government has made over the past 4 years.
I don't know necessarily that people are going to be voting against her per se in this election. I don't think it'll be a reaction to that. I think it is a reaction to the realities on the ground that the policies that her and her government have put through resulted in the unemployment of a lot. We're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in Alberta, tens of thousands here in Calgary alone. So that, to me, is what is motivating people in this election. It isn't so much the personality of the leader. It's the policies that that leader has imposed and is brutalizing the public with.
The latest polls show the UCP currently leading the NDP by 8%. Lethbridge is a vibrant city and one of the fastest growing in our province. From Lethbridge Hurricanes games to the upcoming Whoop Up Days at Exhibition Park, the downtown BRZ wants people to feel safe when visiting our city for an event. An information session was held at CASA earlier today, featuring presentations from the City of Lethbridge, Recreation and Culture, St. John's Ambulance, and the Lethbridge Police Service. The topic of discussion, safety and security.
People focus on the event itself and don't think about the logistics and some of the things you really need to think about as far as making sure people are safe at the event And if something goes south at that event, making sure you have the right people in place to deal with those things. I myself personally learned a lot of things today, especially from St. John's Ambulance, and knowing that the importance of some of those things you don't normally think about.
Lethbridge Police Service is hoping that the Red Vest Watch program, which is currently accepting volunteers, will help with the public perception of downtown. The halls of justice turned into a crime scene. Lethbridge police need our help identifying a suspect who broke into the Lethbridge courthouse over the weekend and stole money from a cash box in the law library office. He has also caused around $1,500 in damage. If you've seen this man, call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. Crime Stoppers will pay cash for information leading to his arrest. A new transit route connecting Lethbridge to Medicine Hat began yesterday. The Highway 3 connector stops in many communities along the way, including Coaldale, Tabor, Grassy Lake, Bow Island, Seven Persons, and Medicine Hat. The Southland Transportation buses arrive and depart from Lethbridge on 4th Avenue between 5th and 6th Street South. The service is free of charge for the first 2 weeks. Southland Transportation has operated school and charter buses for over 45 years. Lethbridge City Council chambers was packed yesterday with supporters for St. Michael's Hospital. They made their case to receive $15,000 for a monument to recognize 90 years of service from the Sisters of St. Martha. Gary Cohn served 27 years on the board of directors for St. Mike's Hospital, and he says the city owes this to the nuns for their tireless efforts.
They built a hospital from scratch in 1930 that became a very large hospital and a center of excellence. And they ran it with a tight ship, with compassion, and it was to do good for the city. The city's recognized all kinds of other people, but the sisters ran under the radar, as I said. Nobody knew about them. They just thought, well, it's another group of nuns. But no, they contributed more in 90 years than any other individual or corporation has done in that same period of time. So I felt that the city, not a private group, owed them a debt of the debt of an honor and recognition by placing a monument to their work in the city. And today, my heart soars like an eagle.
The religious orders will be retiring to Nova Scotia later this summer. Affordable housing in Lethbridge is a growing concern. Councillor Belinda Crowson, who has been working on a strategic housing strategy, which includes $11 million in permanent supportive housing funded by the provincial government.
So that is approximately a 40-bed unit, and it's for people who are experiencing homelessness and who need, the best way to think about that would be it's sort of the care of a senior's home, but for people who have been dealing with addictions and other issues. We know what the grants are. We have the data that we can just match up with the grant, and we are going to be going after both levels of government. This will also be something useful for organizations so that they can go after their own grants.
Stoke Ingram says the changing landscape means the job demands are shifting. Overall, healthcare and technology-related positions will dominate Canada's job market in the future. Jan Clemis did not plan on becoming an advocate for kidney donation. The Montana native shared her story with BCN's Loris Alexander about how a kidney transplant bought her precious time with family and friends. Time that would not have been possible if not for the life-saving gift she was given.
Jan Clemis, along with many of her family members, has polycystic kidney disease.
It's been a long road, actually. The kidney disease that I have is a hereditary disease. So for the last 4 generations, we've been looking at kidney failure and dialysis.
Clemis had to start dialysis when her kidneys started to fail.
In March of 2017, I had renal failure and had to start dialysis at that time.
Clemis has either walked or served as part of the support staff for the Kidney March since its inception in 2010.
Jan is a huge advocate for raising awareness for organ donation. That's one of the things that she's always out supporting. So she comes out and supports us in things like the local kidney walk that's at Henderson Lake in May. She comes out to, it's our 10th anniversary of the Kidney March, and she comes out to that every year and brings out her kids and their spouses and all family and friends.
Clemis is now living a normal life after her son Blair donated a kidney to her last year.
My son gave me my kidney, which has just really, it's given me back my life.
Clemis's message to us is giving back and believes we all have the ability to do so.
Pay it forward and make an impact in someone else's life. Just like Logan Boulay saved 6 lives with the gift that he had. And we all have that potential to make those changes in someone else's life.
1 in 10 Canadians have kidney disease. That's 4 million people. For those wanting to donate to Clems's journey in her kidney march this September, please visit thekidneyfoundation.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
The Lethbridge Friendship Society is the city's longest-standing Indigenous organization, and they're preparing for a massive event this summer. Powwow and relay races will be held from July 16th and 17th. The event was unanimously supported by City Council, and those at the Society are celebrating.
We'll be hosting the National Friendship Centers from right across Canada, 121 in total, 21 of them being here in the province of Alberta. So we're anticipating well over 600, 700 delegates for the meetings alone, and then you throw in the Indian relay race, which is going to bring in thousands, and then you add the powwow to that, we'll be bringing in even more people coming in. I guess we're very grateful that City Council has supported this event, and we're very looking forward to a successful event.
The Friendship Centre predicts an infusion to the city of over $1 million from the powwow. A respected champion for Indigenous people has died in Regina at the age of 72. Elder Noel Starblanket died in hospital this morning due to complications with diabetes. Starblanket became the youngest chief in Canada in 1971 when he was named Chief of Starblanket Cree Nation at the age of 24. The former residential school survivor was president of the National Indian Brotherhood, which is now known as the Assembly of First Nations, from 1976 to 1980. A retired city worker has been charged with murder after a shooting spree left 4 people dead in Penticton, British Columbia on Monday. 60-year-old John Britton, a registered engineer in BC, worked in development services for the city of Penticton until his retirement. 2 women and 2 men were killed in 3 different locations during an hour-long shooting spree that began 10:30 a.m. on Monday morning. It ended when the suspect turned himself into the front desk of the local RCMP detachment. Police are still investigating a possible motive for the killings. Have you ever seen a large structure implode? You know, I remember watching the Calgary General Hospital implode back in 1998 in Calgary. Well, in Miami Beach, the old South Shore Hospital was imploded into rubble earlier today. City officials say the implosion was to make way for new construction of a high-rise condominium building. Firefighters declared success in a 12-hour battle to extinguish an inferno engulfing the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral yesterday. The blaze claimed its spire and roof, but spared its legendary bell towers and the Crown of Christ. The world-famous 18th century organ that boasts 8,000 pipes also survived. One of France's richest businessmen, Bernard Arnault, has pledged $226 million to rebuild the almost 900-year-old church. Architectural experts say the catastrophic fire that engulfed the Notre Dame Cathedral that was undergoing renovations is a loss not only for the city, but for the many who went on pilgrimages there.
So it's a time of sadness. But Notre Dame of Paris, the cathedral, is literally at the core, the center of the city. I mean, the ancient city, the old one in the island that is located, is a point of pilgrimage. People have got to this place even before Christianity was around. That's the church started from this kind of pagan center apparently, but from there grew up into what is today. So for Paris to think of itself necessarily is totally tied to Notre Dame of Paris.
It was on this day that Charlie Chaplin was born. Prince Andrew and the Duchess of York announced their divorce. The Rolling Stones released their debut album, and Michael Jordan plays his last NBA game. This is Today in History for April the 16th.
April 16th, 2007. A gunman opens fire on the campus of Virginia Tech, killing 32 students and faculty members before killing himself. The number of victims made the shooting the deadliest in modern U.S. history. 1947. The country's deadliest industrial accident takes place in the harbor of Texas City, Texas. That's where the ships Grand Camp and the High Flyer, both carrying ammonium nitrate fertilizer, each explode a day apart. The blasts and resulting fires kill 576 people and injure 5,000 others. 1917. communist revolutionary Vladimir Lenin returns to Russia, ending years of exile in Switzerland. Months later, Lenin's Bolshevik movement seizes power, establishing what becomes the Soviet Union. 1889. Charlie Chaplin, whose comic tramp character made him one of the first big movie stars, is born in London. 1996. Britain's Prince Andrew and his wife Sarah, the Duchess of York, better known as Fergie, announce they are getting a divorce. 1964. Also in Britain, the Rolling Stones released their debut album, The Rolling Stones, England's newest hitmakers. And 2003.
I would be content in the sense that I gave the game of basketball as much as I could give it physically.
Basketball great Michael Jordan plays his last NBA game as he and his Washington Wizards lose to the Philadelphia 76ers. Today in history, April 16th, David Melendi, The Associated Press.
Well, we had kind of a mixed bag today, sunshine mixed with cloud and cooler, but a warming trend is on the way. Complete weather details are coming up. We had a mixture of sun and cloud today. Tonight, a few more clouds developing with a low near 3 degrees. Mainly sunny with a high near 15 tomorrow. Thursday, sunshine and a high expected near 22. Good Friday, also sunny and a high of 22 degrees. Saturday, the clouds return and the mercury will drop to 11. Easter Sunday, a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 12. Monday, the clouds should clear out and we should see a high near 17. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 13 and an average low of -1. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1984 at 30 degrees, and the record low was -11 in 1953. Sunrise was at 6:38, sunset at 8:25. Let's have a look at how tomorrow's shaping up across the country. A good chance of rain and a high near 14 for Victoria. Showers and 13 is on tap for Vancouver. Mainly sunny and 14 for Calgary on Wednesday. Pretty much the same picture for Edmonton. A good chance of showers and 16 is on tap for Regina. 16 and rain as well for Saskatoon tomorrow. Overcast and 15 for Winnipeg. In the central part of the country, Toronto will be mainly sunny and 11. Ottawa will also have sunshine and should see a high near 13. Montreal will be sunny and 11. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will have sun mixed with cloud and a high of 9. Halifax, Nova Scotia will have rain mixed with snow and a high near 5. Charlottetown, PEI will have light flurries and 3. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect snow and a high of only +2 on Wednesday. Canadian dairy producer Saputo has closed a $1.7 billion deal to acquire Dairy Crest Group of Britain. Dairy Crest manufactures and sells cheese, butter, spreads, and oils. The company has close to 100,000 employees in 7 locations across the UK. The transaction was payable in cash from a new bank loan. Saputo says it has invested in a well-established and successful industry player with a solid asset base and an experienced management team. Manufacturing sales came in lower than expected in February following a gain of 0.8% in January. Stats Canada says sales fell 0.2% to $56.6 billion. That failed to meet economists' expectations of no change. The federal agency says sales were hurt by a 4.4% drop in the motor vehicle assembly industry and a 5.9% decline in the wood products sector. Excluding motor vehicle sales, manufacturing sales were up 0.2%. German prosecutors have indicted former Volkswagen CEO Martin Winterkorn and 4 others on charges of fraud and unfair competition. They say Winterkorn knew about the deceptive practice of using engine software to manipulate diesel engines' emissions. Winterkorn's lawyers have declined to comment while they review the case files. French tycoon Bernard Arnault and his luxury goods group LVMH have pledged the equivalent of $226 million for the reconstruction of Notre Dame. This follows reports of a $113 million donation from another French billionaire, Francois Pinault. A statement today from LVMH says the cathedral is a symbol of France, its heritage, and its unity. A spokesperson for Paris firefighters say the entire fire is out, but crews are still putting out smoldering hotspots. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, it is election night in Alberta. Polls are open until 8 o'clock this evening. Bridge City News will bring you the results with our live broadcast beginning at 8 p.m. We'll also be interviewing politicians, a political science professor, and join the action at both the Rachel Notley camp in Edmonton and the Jason Kenney camp in Calgary. The latest poll numbers say the UCP will win a majority government with 63 seats, followed by the NDP with 23 seats and the Alberta Party with just 1 seat. But we shall see. UCP Lethbridge West candidate Carrie Flatless says her party has a plan to get more Albertans working. Hear what Carrie has to say next. We'll also hear from her NDP counterpart, Lethbridge West candidate Shannon Phillips. Both of those interviews are on deck. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Do you enjoy working with kids? The Lethbridge Soccer Association is looking for coaches for the outdoor soccer season. Volunteers will be coaching youth ages 4 to 19 and will be able to pick from the available teams. No experience is necessary, but a criminal records check is required. All equipment, uniforms, schedules, and team lists are provided. For more information about this fun opportunity, call Michaela at 403-320-5425. The Watch is looking for volunteers to act as additional eyes and ears for the Lethbridge Police Service. Volunteers will provide an extra layer of safety, promote the city of Lethbridge, build relationships with businesses, and some administrative duties. Training for the Watch program will be ongoing, and volunteers will be on foot patrol working in groups. For more information and to sign up, call Sergeant Mike Williamson at 403-330-5204. Easy Does It is an Al-Anon support group for adult children of alcoholics. Get an opportunity to share about your experiences with those who understand and learn healthy coping skills for your relationships. This group meets Thursdays at 7 p.m. at the Church of the Good Shepherd. For details, call Judy at 403-329-0661. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The provincial election is coming up on April the 16th, and we want to hear from all of the Lethbridge candidates. Joining me in studio right now is UCP Lethbridge West candidate Carrie Flatless. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yeah, I've seen you in my neighborhood knocking on the doors here. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into some of the issues.
For sure. So I came to Alberta when I was a little girl, and it really is the quintessential Alberta story. My family and I packed up everything we owned and drove across 2 provinces from Penticton, BC to Lloydminster, Alberta.
Oh, wow.
Heart of the oil patch in the late 70s. Mm-hmm. And we came here because my father had a great career opportunity there as a young dad. So, you know, that is really symbolic, I guess you could say, of why I decided to run. The last 4 years, I think, have been incredibly difficult for Albertans, for business owners, for energy sector, and just families who are worried about the future and for their kids. So politics has always been something I'm passionate about, and I just felt, you know, it was time to step forward because I cared so much. I'm a mother and I'm concerned about the future for my kids. I hope that they would like to build a life in Alberta as well.
And your current career is as a real estate agent?
I'm an associate broker.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, I've had to step back from that in order to run.
Not too many listings right now then?
No. I was actually doing very, very well in my career, so it was a hard decision to step away from it to run. But I just felt so passionate about what was happening in our province, and I felt, you know, it's time to do the hard work and make people's voices heard. And a lot of people had asked me to run, and I just decided it was the right time to do it.
Now you're door knocking in Lethbridge West, my area as well, but you're going up against a pretty big name, well-known minister in Shannon Phillips. Is that a little intimidating? I mean, she's the incumbent, she's a minister, you know?
It's not intimidating. You know, I respect the minister. She worked very hard for 2 elections to earn that seat. And having been door knocking for the last 8 months, a new appreciation, you know, for what it takes to earn a seat in the legislature. So that being said, I'm running because I feel confident in our economic vision for the future of Alberta. And, you know, I think we can do it. We can deliver the vote. The Conservatives are there. The votes are there. And we just have to work really, really hard and earn every single vote in this riding.
So how many doors would you say you've knocked on so far?
Oh, gosh. So I know by my nomination, which was in December, I had sort of been keeping track, and I think I was well past 4,000 doors personally.
Wow.
Myself. I knocked most of those myself. And then since then, we've continued to door knock, plus I have some volunteers that are door knocking with me. I've probably knocked 7,000 or 8,000 myself, plus thousands of more that our volunteers have knocked.
So what are the big issues in Lethbridge West? What are people telling you? It's the economy, the carbon tax. What are you hearing right now?
You know, I'm so proud to say that when we go to the doors, our voters are actually starting to repeat our platform back to us. We kind of chuckle about it when we're at the doors. So we've actually had people say, Carrie, it's all about jobs, economy, and pipelines, and that is actually our, our platform plank, and that is what people here are concerned about. That being said, Lethbridge voters are super informed, and they understand that we're economically upside down right now in Alberta. So if we don't support the growth of jobs, economy, pipelines, then how do we pay for and protect those public services that we cherish so much in Alberta?
UCP leader Jason Kenney has gone on record saying, listen, we're going to have to cut back. The deficit and the spending is out of control. The debt is growing exponentially. But where do you cut back? You can't cut back on health care, can't cut back on education. Where are you envisioning the cutbacks are going to come from?
Well, we actually aren't going to cut on health and education. What we are saying is that we have to be more responsible with taxpayer money. And this is where we get the big nods of agreement at the door. Albertans are super tuned in to the economic and fiscal situation in Alberta. And we know, so for example, in healthcare, we're spending 40% of our provincial budget on healthcare. We know what a critical file it is. We have an aging population, our wait times are going up, our seniors are concerned about finding continuing care beds as they age. They're languishing in hospitals. So health is super important, education is super important, but where can we find the savings in the administration where we have managers managing managers and move those savings to the front lines? And I really want to emphasize the theme of consultation here. I just talked to a nurse today at the door, and she was very concerned about the future of healthcare on the front line at the hospital. The nurses are struggling. We have folks that say, for example, are being discharged, waiting to get out, taking up beds. There's just a lot of inefficiency in the system that's hurting patients. And so we have always said, going forward, that we will consult with our frontline people to find solutions.
Let me ask you something then, Carrie. Lethbridge has a population of 100,000 people. We have one cardiologist for 100,000 people and no cath lab. So what can you do to be able to reach out to specialists and say, move to Lethbridge? What can you do to entice them? What incentives can you offer?
Well, again, it goes back to we have to find the resources for that critical infrastructure, and the United Conservatives have emphatically acknowledged that we do need a cath lab. As a realtor, I'm also very aware of the growth in Lethbridge, particularly in West Lethbridge. We have high population growth, which is exciting and wonderful, but with that we have to have our infrastructure and be keeping up with that. So we, as we do our full audit of AHS and we look for savings and we find resources that are there that we can put into and look at some of these critical infrastructure projects across the province that Albertans are asking for.
Many business owners I've spoken with, Carrie, they're really upset with the carbon tax implemented 2 years ago here in Alberta, and now Ontario's challenging. The Trudeau Liberals in court. Saskatchewan's going to do the same. Manitoba's doing the same. There's a common theme here. But Alberta, we said, sure, let's go ahead with the carbon tax. Business owners can't stand it. But environmentalists, of course, are very much on board. And like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says, we have to put a price on pollution. So how do you kind of balance that? People say we can't keep polluting the environment.
Right.
We have to put a price on it. But at the same time, we're hurting ourselves economically here.
Albertans didn't ask for a carbon tax, and the NDP did not campaign on the carbon tax. So, when the NDP came to power and they implemented a carbon tax, both working Albertans and our business owners were super unhappy with that. And I think it's an unfair narrative to say that it's an either or with environment and economy. The United Conservatives, and myself included, very much believe that we can strike a balance between environment and economy. And in fact, we know that a strong free enterprise economy, especially in our energy sector, will encourage the type of innovation and technological solutions that can help address some of the climate challenges of our time.
A lot of leading economists across Canada and here in Alberta say that our province is no longer an attractive place to invest in. So how can we change that mindset, in your opinion?
We absolutely can change that. So 2 key planks of our platform are to stimulate and supercharge a free enterprise economy. Are number 1, we are going to reduce corporate taxes by 1/3 over the course of 4 years, which over the long run will actually increase our tax base and compel free enterprise investors to come to Alberta, invest in Alberta, and create jobs. Then the other thing that we're going to do is dedicate a ministry to red tape reduction. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business has actually given Alberta, of all places, a fail on red tape. The red tape burden costs small businesses $6,700 per year per employee, and dramatically reduces their ability to hire and grow. So we take red tape burden very seriously, both within the Alberta government and for free enterprise. So we're going to work really hard to reduce red tape in Alberta.
Your leader, UCP leader Jason Kenney, was talking about getting more people into the trades, how important that is. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, and I think that's so exciting. You know, and I've got kids coming up into high school, and being a realtor, I have absolutely seen how our tradespeople are some of the most economically prosperous people in our city. You know, they go on to be business owners, entrepreneurs, contractors, they hire other contractors, they support our critical construction industry in Lethbridge. So we're going to work very hard to strengthen our apprenticeship programs, expand those programs for high school students. You know, being a university city, we know that post-secondary is super important, but we also know that going into the trades is just as meaningful and exciting of an endeavor for a career, you know, as something in post-secondary and what that would lead you to as well.
Let's talk about university and college kids. My son graduated. He was an honor student, 3-year program. He's $22,000 in debt. He cannot find a job in his industry. So how can you help students like my son, who have graduated, an honor student, and they're struggling?
Yeah, and you know, I was a student here in Lethbridge too, so I went to college and university, and I was in my mid-20s at that time, so I was supporting myself. And it is incredibly stressful for young people now to not only find a job after they're finished school, but even to sustain themselves while they're in school. And that is a direct result of anti-business NDP policy over the last 4 years. So, for example, hiking the minimum wage that quickly by that much has really hurt business owners, and they're telling me this every day.
So they're laying off some of their employees,
it forces
cutting
them,
hours?
Yeah, it forces them into a corner, right? They want to keep their staff, but if margins, for example, in the restaurant industry or whatever business they're in, especially small business owners, if the margins are super tight, you know, they're going to have to reduce hours and or pass those costs on to the consumer. So our young people now under this government are seeing record high unemployment levels, and it just goes right back to our strategy for stimulating the economy and making sure that those jobs are there for those young people.
What about the call that the UCP wants to reduce the minimum wage for those under the age of 18? Some say that's not fair. Why would you go down that road?
You know, I actually disagree with the statement that it's unfair. You know, for say a 15-year-old young person who's looking for their first job, I think that person and most people in society in Alberta would agree that they have less skills and experience than, say, a 28-year-old with a university degree and a long resume. So by allowing that youth wage, that allows our young people to get those critical first-time jobs so that they can build that resume when they come into the economy as an adult.
Jason Kenney says he wants to crack down on crime, especially rural crime. What's the plan to help farmers defend their homes?
So we do recognize that our rural citizens are at a disadvantage because they're so far from local law enforcement detachments.
Takes a long time to respond, right?
Yeah, and we're seeing the results of that. So, you know, we're going to look at updating existing legislation to make sure that we're considering what's fair in assessing the reasonable use of, you know, in assessing reasonable action taking to defend one's person and personal safety.
Reasonable force, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay. Another UCP proposal is to hold a referendum on equalization. You know, how would that actually work?
So we're very unapologetically saying that Alberta is not getting a fair deal on pipelines. Rachel Notley and the NDP have made best friends out of Justin Trudeau for the last 4 years. It's very clear that both Rachel Notley, the Minister of Environment, and Justin Trudeau are not interested in supporting Alberta energy. And so it's time to play hardball. People in Lethbridge know that prosperity in the energy sector actually spills over into prosperity for folks in Lethbridge. So if we can't get a pipeline built in Alberta, we are fully prepared to trigger a referendum on equalization so that we can force Ottawa to the table and renegotiate that formula.
So if you were to be elected April 16th, you know, the UCP party's in, you're in as well, and let's say Jason Kenney reaches out to you and say, I want to make you a minister. What portfolio would you envision receiving? What would you love to see as a portfolio?
Well, first of all, if I was elected, that would be an honor, and if I was asked by Jason to be a minister, that would be incredibly exciting. I'm very passionate about the energy file. I'm very passionate about education. So those are two that are super interesting to me. But honestly, you know, any opportunity to represent in the legislature the issues that matter to Lethbridge would be incredibly exciting, no matter what I'm asked to, you know, no matter what I'm tasked with, right? So,
what can we do to help our farmers, specifically the canola farmers? As you know, there's this embargo with China right now, the diplomatic tensions, since Canada arrested the Huawei executive last December, being extradited to the United States. So, you know, China is saying, no, it's the contaminated organisms. That's the reason why there's been a trade embargo on Richardson International and Viterra canola from Winnipeg and from Regina. And as well, I mean, we have Richardson International here in Lethbridge. So what can we do to really support our canola farmers?
You know, I think it goes back to a couple of things. Obviously, we would like to see a Conservative government elected in Ottawa, you know, and we are going to be very supportive of our colleagues on the federal side in helping them with their message. But I think it also goes back to our free enterprise platform, and farmers are business people, and the red tape reduction strategy is going to help those folks as well.
Now, what specific local issues are of concern to you, and what are you really hearing from people in Lethbridge West?
There's such a diversity of issues, but definitely the theme is getting rid of the carbon tax. People here are very concerned about that. It is not popular in Lethbridge. Whenever we talk about it at the doors, you know, they are fully supportive of our platform to scrap the carbon tax. But people are concerned about jobs. You know, whether they work for a business owner or they are a business owner, people here just want to see the red tape go away. They're very supportive of our job creator tax cut. They just want to make sure that we can sustain a healthy, vibrant economy in Lethbridge.
Lethbridge West UCP candidate Carrie Flatla, thanks a lot for joining me in studio here today.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
And it's less than 2 weeks to the provincial election, and we want to hear from all of the Lethbridge candidates. Today we have the incumbent MLA with us, Environment Minister Shannon Phillips, the NDP candidate for Lethbridge West. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
So lots of door knocking, thousands of doors here. How's the campaigning been going so far?
Well, you know, people talk to me about a few different things. They talk to me about jobs and diversification. They talk to me about healthcare and education and post-secondary education. I hear a lot about stability in our public services, but people also want to see a plan for the future. That's what they wanted to see in 2015, and they like the progress so far, and they want us to keep continuing with those things.
Now, you're the Environment Minister. Is the carbon tax actually reducing emissions since it was implemented in Alberta in 2017? A lot of small business owners I've spoken to, they have a real problem with this carbon tax, saying you know, it's just doing a lot of damaging effect to my business and even my home. I know myself, when I received my recent gas bill, it was like $23 in carbon tax, and my bill itself was $43. So what are you hearing from a lot of constituents, specifically a lot of the small business owners?
So our climate leadership plan contains rebates for 65% of Albertans. It also reduces the small business tax by a third. But more than that, it's reducing emissions. We've already reduced emissions by 7 megatons. How much is that? It's a third of the annual emissions of the entire province of Manitoba. We did that in 1 year. We know that we are on track to about 50 megatons of reductions. And that is Alberta essentially reducing the carbon in the barrel, ensuring that we've got natural gas electricity as well as renewables, that we are investing in energy efficiency, where we're creating thousands of new private sector jobs in those areas, that we've got investments in clean technology, and we're helping our oil and gas industry reduce the carbon in the barrel so that they can be competitive for a generation to come. So we are accomplishing all of those objectives, but number one, yes, we are reducing pollution, we're cleaning up the air, and we're doing our part on emissions reductions.
Let me ask you something though, you're Environment Minister, is it killing you a little bit in the inside, the fact that you have to stick up for pipelines, getting pipelines built?
Absolutely not. Pipelines are key to our success as Albertans and our success as Canadians.
What about damaging the environment?
Look, our pipeline and oil and gas sector is within the context of the climate leadership plan, reducing its impact on the environment. At the same time, we are ensuring that we are attracting new investment, that we are ensuring that Albertans have good paying, mortgage paying jobs, and that we are leading the world in clean technology. And it's exactly that as an energy producer that Alberta should be leading on. And so I'm enormously proud to be able to do that, to ensure that Albertans have good paying jobs, to ensure we get our resources to market. Right now, we do have pipeline delays. We need to hold the federal government to the timelines that they have set out. We need to make sure. Is there any pressure
we can put on the Trudeau Liberals at all? Is there anything we can do?
We have indeed done that. They bought the pipeline.
But still, it's death by delays. Nothing's really happening with it.
Well, we have an NEB approval, and we are now waiting for the final approval, which we assume will be coming very shortly, so that construction can resume. In the meantime, though, what Premier Notley has done is she has ensured that we are getting our product to market. It's not ideal to do it on the rail, but the alternative, as the Conservatives have proposed, is to keep 120,000 barrels per day in the ground. That is not Rachel Notley's approach. Let's get that oil to market. Let's make sure that we can continue to collect those royalties, to keep people employed, to attract investment, and ensure that we are getting those pipelines built. Now, we are in a position where Trans Mountain is almost over the finish line. TransCanada has been guaranteed on Keystone XL 50,000 barrels per day. And we now have an approval on Line 3 as well in Minnesota that just came last week. I traveled to Minnesota to meet with state level legislators, to meet with the business community there, to make the case for that pipeline. I'm very pleased that it has cleared its state level regulatory hurdles. That will help, but again, it's still only to the American market.
So they understand the importance as well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the work that we've been doing as a government, in addition to pressuring the federal government into buying that pipeline, in addition to making sure that we are advocating for market access in every room that will have us in British Columbia and elsewhere. We have also moved Canadian public opinion. So we're at a position now where we went from 4 in 10 Canadians agreeing with us that we need market access for our products to now 7 in 10 Canadians, including a majority of British Columbians.
Let's talk about healthcare for just a moment here as well, Shannon. 100,000 people here in Lethbridge, 1 cardiologist. NDP's been in power since 2015. I remember with the NDP, it's all about supporting healthcare, attracting specialists, bringing them here. I'm hearing more and more that a lot of doctors and specialists are leaving our region. So what can we do to attract them to come to Lethbridge?
Absolutely.
1 cardiologist for 100,000 people. That's not near enough.
I recently met with that cardiologist, and I share those concerns, and so does the government. So we have over the last 3 to 4 years attracted 1,200 doctors and insured 4,000 nurses.
They're not here.
Some of them are. Now, is there more to do? Absolutely. Absolutely there is. So that we need to make sure that we have stable, predictable funding on the operational side, but also that we're making those capital investments for things like a catheterization lab, which does attract more specialists, not just cardiologists, but other associated specialists. The solution here is not to cut the heart out of the healthcare system by introducing American-style privatization or cutting the budgets. The solution here is stable, predictable investment into our healthcare system, which we have done, making those thoughtful investments, both in our hospital settings, but also in primary care, in mental health, in all of the other ways that we understand healthcare.
Let's say I'm a healthcare specialist and you want to lure me to move to Alberta and maybe in Lethbridge here, a cardiologist. What would you do to entice me as a specialist to come to this region here, outside of the fact that we've got the beautiful coulees and Waterton Lakes National Park out of our backyard?
Well, one of the things we did was I did put together a new negotiated agreement with physicians, so physicians have that stability and predictability with respect to compensation frameworks, with respect to some of those other questions that physicians often have. And I think going forward, a catheterization lab is absolutely necessary at the Chinook Regional Hospital. With the improvements we made to the hospital, we have shelled in those facilities, and as we go forward with the capital planning process, we will make sure that Lethbridge has the investments that we need to be able to take care of people right here in this city.
Now let's stick with healthcare for just a moment, talk about the 2,000 extended care beds for our seniors. How many of those can we see here in Lethbridge?
I think that will be over time. We did receive some for the first 2,000 long-term care bed tranche that we made that commitment in 2015 and we finished that commitment. We are also seeing investments in continuing care here in Lethbridge. So for that step down, if you will, in terms of overall health care, but a supportive living facility for a new supportive living facility for seniors over on the west side. That's also a $10 million commitment on behalf of our province that we announced just earlier in March. So there's a number of different things on seniors care that we are doing. And Premier Notley, of course, announced last week that we would be covering prescription drugs as well for seniors, for the majority of seniors, for 4 out of 5 of seniors, to cover those co-pays, to make life more affordable and save seniors, some of them hundreds of dollars a year.
Let's talk about ARCHES now, the safe consumption and injection site. Many people, including Mayor Spearman, we've had him on the show before talking about what a difference it's making in our community. But then there are other people, the detractors, that say, you know what, it's bringing property values down around the neighborhood. The business owners are irate, they're upset about it because you've got a lot of these drug users hanging around and a lot of their customers are afraid to go into their businesses. So what do you say to those business owners to give them peace of mind?
Well, I've been working very closely with the business community in the downtown since 2015, and they asked me for a couple of things. One, stable, predictable funding to the municipality, and so that they could make sure that law enforcement had the resources it needed. We did that. We responded on the safe consumption site. The request for a safe consumption site came from a multi-pronged approach and a multi-stakeholder committee that included AHS, but also had with it law enforcement, first responders, city officials, and the business community. And so we put that in place, but we have also funded other associated services. So Intox is now being funded. Detox beds are now being funded. The city has collaborated with law enforcement to have a better law enforcement presence downtown, and I think that's really, really important too. Safe consumption site has saved approximately 800 lives so far. That is significant.
Are we just being an enabler though? Because I've talked to some families who, young people, they actually go to the site saying, I can OD and I'm going to be brought back with naloxone. This is wonderful. It's a better high for me. So are we just working as enablers, or is the proper counseling and programs getting out there to help a lot of those who are most vulnerable and in need?
This is an evidence-based way to save lives so that people can access those services. You can't access those services if you're dead. So, you know, this has been the evidence-based response from healthcare providers to an opioid crisis that we've never really seen before, ever. These synthetic opioids are highly addictive. They evade law enforcement in ways that other drugs don't. They are a pernicious scourge across the prairies, but in particular in Lethbridge. And so the response has to be all of the things. It has to be a safe consumption environment. It has to be. They save lives. But also, too, we need to have investments in housing, investments in detox, investments in storefront mental health clinics, which is another thing that we've committed to in the platform, investments in youth mental health and addictions programming, and of course, as I mentioned, those in-tox and detox services. On top of that, our law enforcement officials need to be given the tools for the job. So that Ambassador Watch program has made a huge difference to the downtown business community, and I am so pleased that they've been able to get that done. I just met with the business revitalization zone for the downtown the other day. There are now conversations about having a BRZ for that east portion of the downtown so that those business owners can be better heard. I think that's a really good way to go about it.
So having the voices heard is wonderful. What else can we do to attract more business to the downtown core?
Absolutely. So, that was one of the things that in 2015, I sat down with the BRZ and I said, okay, how can I be helpful to you? And one of those ways was through housing and social services and so on, because of the social problems that we see manifesting themselves in the downtown. So I think we've been able to meet some of those. I think there's obviously more to do. Certainly pulling back on those on that progress is not going to be good for downtown businesses. But overall, I think making sure that we invest in housing so we can have some infill, so there's more folks in there spending their money, ensuring that we have new investments, like a performing arts center, for example. The province has committed $22 million to a performing arts center. And I assume that will be cited in the downtown. That's certainly what the city has said so far. So that's a good piece of anchor infrastructure. And over and above that, it's just a general economic development strategy, right? That we're attracting investments like Cavendish. We are attracting investments like an expansion to Richardson's Oilseeds. And we're doing that, we're allowing the funds for the exhibition to examine their work on a redeveloped trade and conference center. And investing in the airport as well.
You know, Transport Minister Brian Mason was in town recently talking about the new bridge over the Old Man River, the $100 million, construction to begin in 2022. I'm thinking, Lethbridge is kind of a swing riding. We've got a lot of support for the NDP and the UCP. It's kind of like a two-horse race here in town. It's a real dogfight. What other pre-election goodies can we look forward to seeing here in Lethbridge? Outside of the bridge?
People have asked us about the airport. And I think that it is high time that Lethbridge had a redeveloped airport. The city has done a great job of attracting WestJet, and that's fantastic. We helped the exhibition do some further planning on a trade and conference center, and those two pieces of infrastructure, airport and conference center, is something that the business community has been talking to me about since we were elected. We funded the exhibition to the tune of $1 million. To kind of come up with their plans for that trade and conference center. I think that's a great thing. And now we're going to have more to say about the airport, because that's how you really grow the economy. Not just for passenger service, but for cargo service, and grow Lethbridge as that agri-food and renewables powerhouse that we know that it can be.
But let me ask you something. We're going to see a lot of these pre-election goodies, infrastructure projects coming online, the support from the provincial government, but the deficit and the debt, it's out of control. How are we going to rein in that spending? Like, what are we going to do? Where's that money going to come from?
Well,
to balance the budget by
sure.
2023, 2024, right?
I'll dispute the premise of the question. None of these things are out of control. We have a careful and prudent plan to pass to balance that has been well articulated by Premier Notley, where we will come back into balance for at 2023. Jason Kenney has a plan that will bring us into balance at 2022. What's the difference between the two plans? There's scarcely a difference in terms of the debt to GDP ratio, or any of the operational budget. What's the difference? The difference is that Mr. Kenney will be blowing a $4.5 billion hole in the budget through the biggest tax cut in provincial history, which is a giveaway to profitable corporations. We are not talking about any kind of tax cut for small business. This is for already profitable corporations. And that's $4.5 billion. That spend far outpaces any of the careful and modest investments that Rachel Notley has said that we will make in healthcare, education, services, or infrastructure.
But don't those big corporations also employ thousands of Albertans?
They do. And you know,
Right.
it's interesting because the UCP platform doesn't articulate any growth at all from that giveaway. There are big fat zeros where there should be an economic uplift in their platform. That's the thing. It is an unnecessary spend when we could have the right priorities and invest in things that people have said are necessary, like healthcare, education, seniors care, and childcare.
NDP candidate for Lethbridge West and Minister Shanna Phillips, thanks a lot for joining me in studio today.
Thank you for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.